So there's this conspiracy with saturated fat that has been going on for a long time, and we're going to kind of explain why both sides are wrong, because that's just fun. So what happened is a bunch of scientists a while ago discovered a correlation between saturated fat and cardiovascular disease. They saw that a lot of heart attack victims had high levels of saturated fat. It was a specific type of saturated fat, palmitic acid. So when they saw this, they deemed it necessary to let us know to reduce the amount of saturated fat that we are consuming. And since egg yolks and red meat both contain a lot of saturated fat, they kind of became the redheaded stepchild of the nutrition world. So the problem is that these levels of saturated fat don't come from consuming saturated fat. This is how it works. If your body consumes carbohydrates, those are converted into glucose or glycogen and stored in the liver and in the tissues. But once those stores are full, any excess carbohydrates are then converted into saturated fat, palmitic acid, and then it's stored as saturated fat. So the problem is not consuming saturated fat, it's that it's excess carbs coming in more than your body has the ability to store that are then converted into these saturated fats and stored as saturated fats. Now, these fats can also be combined with glycerol to form triglycerides. Now, that's another major risk factor to cardiovascular disease. Oops. So consuming saturated fat is not the problem. Since the excess carbohydrates are converted into saturated fats, we just assume that saturated fats are the problem. Now let's look at the other side a little bit, and let's look at when these saturated fats can be a problem. So we understand now that if we have too many toxins coming in, that the body can store some of those toxins in fat cells if it's too much for the body to deal with and the body can't get rid of them. So if you're an animal, say you're a cow, and you have all these toxins coming into your body, like food that your body was not intended to eat, or maybe antibiotics that are keeping you alive while you live in a little tiny cage and stand in your own feces, because that's not good times. If all these toxins are coming in, a lot of those will be stored in your fat. So now we go and we eat that steak and we eat this animal fat, and all those toxins are then coming into us. We're like eating the transport system of their toxins. So that is a situation where those saturated fats could be very unhealthy to us. Now, another situation can be if your digestion is not working correctly. If your bile is not flowing properly, which is very common, and we teach how to correct that in our free digestive course online, so I'm not going to go into that here, but if bile is not flowing properly, you can't emulsify fats correctly and break them down in a manner so that the body can use them. So now those fats just stay in the system and they start to rot and ferment and they become toxic, and there you go. Consuming those saturated fats was just a problem for you. It was not healthy because you were unable to break them down. However, if you eat a clean animal that was grass-fed, it wanders around in a field, it's not taking in all these drugs, now those saturated fats can be beneficial to you. We know that fats are needed in the body and that there's a lot of operations that the body does that needs these fats. So if it's a clean animal and you have the ability to break it down and process those fats correctly, all of a sudden these saturated fats are beneficial to you. So now that we understand that it's not consuming the saturated fats that's creating all this excess saturated fats, we need to be more afraid of consuming too many carbohydrates that are then converted into palmitic acid and stored as saturated fats. So basically we just bitch slap both sides of that argument, and it's pretty fun when you can deheat an argument by pointing out that both sides are wrong.